listening to Opening the Harp Chakra, the podcast, bringing you beautiful, healing, and magical harp music and talking with the artists that create it. Well, today's guest, a very talented Celtic harp player, multi-instrumentalist, and acclaimed composer. Her music has appeared on the PBS special Alone in the Wilderness. Her music has appeared in many other television programs and independent films. She's also involved in therapeutic music programs. I'm so very happy to welcome to the podcast Lisa Lynne. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jay. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Very happy to have you here. You have been everywhere doing everything with your harp music, all over the country. I think I saw you once at the Ferry Festival in Maryland.
Oh, my.
Many years ago. And you've seen you all over YouTube, and it's just nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Well, we're going to feature some tracks from your latest CD, Harmony House. But first, I definitely want to talk to you about your beginnings and how you found your way to the harp. How did that all happen for you?
Well, I actually crossed a pretty wide ocean because I was a heavy metal musician before I discovered the harp.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, going way back, I actually started playing guitar as a kid. Mm-hmm. I had some cousins that played guitar, so I strummed acoustic folk music until I got to be a teenager and wanted to have an electric guitar and be in a rock band. And that was still pretty unheard of at the time. Girl musicians had not, been in the front lines like they are now. But I convinced my mother to use my college savings, which was only $400 by the time I was in high school, to allow me to cash it in and get an electric guitar. So I did, and I listened to my records, and I learned songs by Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin and Oz already, and I just could not get an audition as a girl guitar player at the time. It just wasn't cool yet. And so, but I did know there was a shortage of bass players. So I traded in the guitar for a bass, and I was in. I suddenly had a band and a couple of different bands, and I could really, hold it down with the cover tunes and the rock tunes. And eventually I was in a original heavy metal band, and I just was really, I loved it. And there's a lot of great music, particularly from, the 70s. And I just was really into it. And I would go to the Renaissance Fair every year, and I always had a deep love of acoustic instruments. And I was into Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. And I was playing my mandolin at the Renaissance Fair in a group of gypsies. And I came across the harp booth. It was triplet harps. Early in their years, they used to go to the Renaissance Fair. And I just, it just really, really floored me, the beauty that I was hearing from these instruments. And I sat down to try one. And I can't say there's been a more magical moment in my life that I felt like I had been doing it forever. And right away, I could pick out the chords, and people assumed I was already a player. And I just sat there for hours in their booth, completely. We all know the feeling when you're at the beginning threshold of going into that world. It is so potent and so magical.
Absolutely.
And so, not of this world, really. And I was smitten and in love, and I just couldn't stay away from the harp booths. And of course, they were very gracious and let me, stay around their booth throughout the season of the fair. And I was a broke musician at the time, so I went home determined to save every penny and come back the next year, which I did. And I carried my first harp down the hill, and I thought of hardly anything else except I was so in love with it. I just wanted to share it. And I wasn't in touch, didn't even know there was a world of folk harp to get, resources and support from. So I taught myself to play, and I played along with my Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin albums. And I could play their songs, and I was determined to share it. And I wanted to share it. The only group I had was the heavy metal band. So I actually brought it into the heavy metal band. And not to play heavy metal in it, but to open our last song of the show with just some stroking chords, some medieval sounding chords. And it was incredible. At a heavy metal concert, we were a pretty popular band in Southern California. And at a heavy metal concert, when the harp came out in a club where they're rowdy and shouting and everything, and headbanging was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The harp would come out and play some chords, and it was a silence. You could hear a pin drop in a heavy metal club. And I just knew the power of this instrument. It wasn't even about me at all. It was about the instrument. That it had such a force of good behind it, that my first experience with performing it in that situation was really profound. And so since then, I had been injecting the harp anywhere I could. I went on to get drafted by a full-time working all-girl cover band of classic rock, which played biker bars and military bases all over California. And I always had the harp with me, and I always brought the harp out at the end, and I always let everybody play it and touch the strings. And I felt a mission to share this instrument and to be a part of the resurgence and awareness of the folk harp. So it has never left my side ever since, now 30-something years. And it's been, I think if there's one thing I have contributed is to introduce and expose people who had never been exposed to this instrument in ways to help, keep the tradition alive for each generation.
Absolutely. That's a great story. So let's listen to some of your music, Lisa, from your CD, Harmony House, which is your latest. Can you tell us a little bit about and introduce perhaps Maiden's Prayer?
Sure. Well, this album was done with my husband, who many are aware of his work with the folk harp, Aryeh Frankfurter. Mm-hmm. He plays a lot of instruments, and particularly the string instruments on the album, Swedish nickel harp, viola, and violin. He did all the string work. And this album is our newest album. We did it during the pandemic. We've been trying to finish it for a couple of years, and finally we had the time. So we were able to get it done. It has some traditional music, as each album always does, pay a nod to tradition, and a lot of original music. And this particular piece that opens the album is called Maiden's Prayer. And I actually wrote this, I don't know, a decade ago at least, and recorded it on an old album I had on New Earth Records by the title Maiden's Prayer. But we play this tune a lot in concert, and the arrangements and the production I had then is not like how we do it. And when people want to buy the piece of music, I wanted them to have something closer to the way it sounds like when we play live. So I re-recorded it. Again, the opening track of this new album, recorded in a new way. And it's just one of those pieces that kind of goes to the heart. People always kind of latch on to it. And it was inspired by just loving the feeling and the sound of the medieval music and what it would have been like, what those people wished for and what they prayed for in their time is something I thought a lot about when I wrote this piece.
That is from the CD Harmony House, Maiden's Prayer, and we're talking with Lisa Lynne. Over the years, Lisa, you've been on TV, you've performed and toured extensively, you've had your music in television shows and movies, and now you're doing some therapeutic work with your music as well. Did that develop over time, or is that something fairly new? Or
It started in 1999, so I guess we can say it's been a little over 2 decades now that I have been involved in it. And I didn't know much about it. I had heard a little bit about it, and I admired it, of course, very much, but I hadn't had any connection to it myself. And it was in 1999 when the Columbine tragedy occurred. I was at the time on the Windham Hill label, and I was doing pretty big tours with other Windham Hill artists around the country. But I still did my own small tours, which was a lot of art fairs and shopping malls. And it was during this sort of time when all of it was happening, was the Columbine school shooting tragedy. And I was glued to the TV like everybody in the nation was. Couldn't believe my eyes what was happening, and distraught. And, at that time, that'd been like the worst thing our generation had seen in a long, long time, if at all. It's the worst. And like 2 days later, I got a call from the Sylvia Woods Harp Center that said, one of the Columbine families whose student was critically wounded is actually looking for your music. And they called me, they had one of your CDs, and they asked if they could find more, because it seemed to be the only music that their daughter, who was in the critical care unit at Swedish Hospital in Littleton, Colorado, would want to hear and fall asleep to. And I was so blown away, as you could imagine. It just seemed like this was impossible, that this could be happening. I hadn't left glued to the TV, and here suddenly there was this call about a connection there. And it so happened that I was doing a mall tour in Denver the following 2 weeks later or something. So I arranged to go and meet the family in person, just bringing all my music and bringing my harp to the hospital. And it was the most life-changing day ever. I ended up spending the whole day with her family. Her name's Anne-Marie Hochhalter. She was wounded outside and was paralyzed from the waist down, a sophomore at the high school. And I ended up staying the whole day with her family. And at that time, she was sleeping. I didn't get to meet her that day, but I spent the whole day and was profoundly affected by not only the person who is ill or wounded can benefit from this music, but the people around her are so traumatized and so shocked. And it was just lovely. I was nervous going in. I had no idea what I was going to do, but it flowed so naturally. There, a little bit of music, a little bit of talking. They had some emotional stuff, the brother and mother and father and visitors. They were all set up. There was like 8 kids in critical care, and all the families were camped out in these big classroom-sized places, pretty much 24/7, and neighbors would bring casseroles. It was just really pretty raw. It had only happened a couple of weeks before, and I just never felt so useful in my life, and I never felt so purposeful with the harp ever, and how powerful it was in bringing these people something they could just, hold on to and use. So I was so inspired. I went there and I typed my experience on a little harp chat group online so long ago, and said I wanted to get her a little harp, the student, because her family said she was musical. So does anyone want to chip in? It was like early crowdfunding, way before crowdfunding. Sure. I just thought I'd get her a little lap harp or something, but so many people were so hopeful, wanting to do something. And this story just really touched people's hearts. So ended up all these harpists sent money from all over the world. They sent harp accessories and music books. And we ended up surprising the young high school girl with a full, brand new Celtic harp, triplet harp, made especially for her, engraved for her, a beautiful case made with her name. And just, it was the most profoundly wonderful thing that I had ever experienced. So I got to meet her then and visit her a couple times on some other tours over the next year and show her, she wanted to learn green sleeves. And we ended up with a friendship that goes to this day because she was so moved that all these people cared so much about her. And she went through a couple of dark years, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
But the harp represented goodness to her. And she was so affected by the goodness of people she didn't even know pitching in to buy her this beautiful harp.
Well,
and of course, Triplet, made it easy for us and, a great, great deal. And so that set me on the journey of, okay, now nothing has ever felt like this before. I want to feel this way more often. So I started bringing my harps to my grandmother's rest home. And it's not about playing the harp for people, but putting their hands on the harp. Mm-hmm. So I experimented with bringing a few harps to elderly care homes, and the reaction was incredible. The people came alive. The vibe, everything just was so remarkable that I knew that was what I was going to do the rest of my life. So that was the start of it.
That's beautiful. I think everyone can agree that music is something magical and it is healing, but the harp specifically has a unique quality to it that I think is just amazing. I've played in, for seniors, and the same kind of thing. You have these amazing experiences where people, music, they connect to the music, but there's something about the harp too. It's that the vibration, or when they touch it, when they hear it, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I think it's the pureness, the simplicity of the instrument, the pureness of the tone, how it's deeply ingrained in every culture for so much eons of time. I spent many, many years street performing around California and eventually over the country, and even in other countries, street performing and watching that same profound effect that the instrument has on the people. And when they get a chance to play it too, that's even more so, I believe. Now that I'm touring a little bit less and choosing to do smaller, more intimate and manageable size concerts, at the end, under normal times, of course, and hopefully normal times will happen again before too long, I invite the audience, if it's not too big, to come up and have a chance to stroke the harp. And so at the end of the concert, they actually line up after the show, and I seat every person who wants to at my harp, and I play the left hand for them. And of course, it's in a key, I put it in C. Play the left hand, show them that they could hit any note. And while I'm giving them a good solid bass to play over, and I'm changing chords so that all their notes are still flowing over every chord, the expressions that I see are just so incredible. It is so powerful. And so many people have gone on to find their harp and to make it a big part of their life because they got to make that beautiful of music at the first touch. And being able to help, and I recommend this to all harpists when introducing someone, just play the left hand for them, C, F, and G chords, and you'll see the magic just happen over and over.
I am smiling so big listening to you say this. It's just, that's just so beautiful. Thank you for doing that. Yeah,
sure,
that's
of course.
Great.
Yeah, and so now I have 20 harps. It's called Hands on Harps. I ended up doing a program at City of Hope called Hands on Harps that went for, over a decade before I ended up moving north. And so I would bring harps, 20 harps everywhere. Schools, hospitals, a lot of cancer centers, libraries, and all kinds of places. And I have done it so much that I can get any group playing beautifully, surprisingly beautiful in the shortest period of time. And that's the very favorite thing that I do now.
So I have to admit, I was lying awake last night trying to think how long it takes to tune up 20 harps. So I was trying to do the math. And,
it's pretty fast. Yeah. I would say probably of the 20 harps that I can get it all in my minivan, there's probably 4 full-size Celtics and then probably 6, mid-size elbow high floor harps, and the rest are lap harps. And so I can get it all done in about a half an hour.
Wow. That's impressive. I was thinking
sometimes I have a helper, but if I have to, I prefer not to, but if I have to, it could be a half hour. I tuned harps at Sylvia Woods Harp Center in Glendale. I used to live next door to her. So I got really fast years ago helping her out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we listen to another tune from your latest CD?
Sure.
Can you introduce Ship of Hope?
Sure. Yeah. This was actually another one I plucked from my history. Now that I tour a lot, and again, back on the Windham Hill days, I had these giant orchestrations, and I had recorded this song on Seasons of the Soul a long time ago. But we still play it in concert. I actually tell the whole story of Hands on Harps over the song in the concert with little breaks, and then the song breaks down and I tell more of the story, and then we go. And it's really a funny, gripping tale, and we enjoy doing it a lot. And people have asked for the music so much that we recorded this piece, White Ship of Hope. It was originally White Ship of Hope. We now call it Ship of Hope. And it's based on a beautiful painting by Maxfield Parrish, and it has just inspired the title.
So from her latest CD, Harmony House, Lisa Lynne and Ship of Hope. So, Lisa, Los Angeles Magazine chose you as one of LA's 50 most inspiring women. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is great. How do you react to something like that? I mean, that's such a cool thing.
It was really exciting at the time. It's been a while now since I actually lived in Los Angeles, but it was one of the social workers at City of Hope that nominated me. And so I think it was pretty open. They just put out the word of tell a story about somebody who, inspires you. And it was one of the social workers at the cancer center that sent in a letter. So they just let me know, and it was pretty cool. And there was a little magazine, little photo of me and 49 other women.
Yeah. Nice to have on your resume. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably what it's the best for.
Yeah. Well, we have another tune from your CD to feature. It's called Lion Hearts. What inspired this piece?
Yes, that was actually a brand new piece written in the radiology waiting room where I work now at Good Samaritan in Corvallis. I moved from Los Angeles to San Francisco when I joined up with Aryeh. And then we sold the San Francisco house and bought a farm up here in Oregon before Corvallis and Eugene. We now have a 10-acre farm, and it's a music farm. And we are converting the barn to a folk arts, music and arts center. Right now, I have a store in there called God is Where Recycled, which is a whole other story and a whole other hobby, but it's a flourishing, fun thing too. But when we moved to Oregon, I got immediately invited to be part of Arts Care at Good Samaritan, and they have a really robust, except for this past year, robust program, which puts music and arts. They have artist teachers. There's about 6 musicians and maybe 10 visual artists. And they do all kinds of activities, getting hands-on, patients doing artwork, and music in the various hospital facilities, at the bedside as well. Home visits, palliative care. It's very similar to what I was doing in Los Angeles. However, I get to be just a member instead of organizer, which is very nice for me now. So one of the places that I would play weekly is the radiology laboratory waiting room. And we'll go back to that again soon as we can. And I enjoy it very much. It's 2 or 3 hours just for people that are quite surprised to see me sitting there with my harp when they come in for their appointments. And quite appreciative, too, because it changes, as everybody knows, the whole environment of a whole place that would normally have some stress and anxiety in it, getting their test results. And so I love it. And I use the time actually to compose while I'm there. So it's not that I'm stopping and starting to compose. I just go round and around like a merry-go-round on a piece that I'm working out. And that song was written in the radiology lab, just wanting to create something that's both soothing and hopeful, and just people really would relax into this piece. And I played it over and over and over until it finally took its shape. And when it was recorded was at the beginning of the pandemic. We were working on our album when we realized all our tours were canceled for a couple of months. We thought at the time, dramatic stop in our touring. So we decided to focus on the album. And that first wave of all those frontline workers was all on every channel in the news, and watching it over and over, just like everybody, in tears about what the suffering was and the surprise and shock of everything happening at the time. That was right when we were putting the finishing touches and mixing this piece of music. So I don't know, it just all fit together in one idea of, the courageous people on both sides of the hospital caregivers and the patients going in, and the connection and the caring and the worry and the bad news and the good news, and all of it folded into the big cycle of life. And so that's the best way I can describe the feeling of this piece for me.
So that is Lion Hearts, Lisa Lynne from the album Harmony House. You're right. That was very soothing and very hopeful. It's nice.
Thank you. Good.
So, what other instruments do you play besides 20 harps?
Well, from guitar and mandolin, I've always collected and played fretted instruments. So the other plucked instruments that you hear on all my albums are usually me. Sometimes they're Aryeh, but the fretted instruments are more my thing. So there isn't really anything that I can't somehow manage to get some sound on. Jack of all trades, master of none. I can just fake it till I make it and, use a lot of open tunings and stuff. But that heavy metal finger pick style has stayed with me and allowed me to play pretty strong and precise. We, before the pandemic, we formed a quartet with two other incredible musicians called New World String Project. And John and Stuart from Molly's Revenge are these incredible Irish musicians that we teamed up with. So we have a quartet show that's really lively, really exciting. And that has got my cittern playing and my bouzouki playing really at top speed and top force. It's quite a lively, exciting music. We're having a record come out this year as well. So that has gotten my favorite things up, the cittern and the bouzouki. I play the harp maybe 4 or 5 songs in the concert at that time. So it's pretty fun to do something different. Most recently, since this year off, I've taken up the clawhammer banjo and I love it. I love it. Whole different animal, man. Nothing I ever knew before works this. It's starting all over with a whole new technique. So I sit there every night, 1 or 2 hours, playing the old time tunes. And myself and Aryeh have really appreciated old time music. It has so much beauty and depth to it that we've sort of gotten into that lately. He plays the fiddle and I play the clawhammer. He's way faster than me, but I'm getting there.
Excellent. Hey, let's listen to one more tune from your latest album. This is the Circle the Moon. Yeah, so can you introduce this for us?
Sure. Circle the Moon was also another, I guess that's sort of a theme for this album. I picked out some of my favorite pieces over the last decade at least of recording, a lot of them on the Windham Hill and New Earth label, that I wanted to do the way that we play them now. And this is an example of it. It was on my Hopes and Dreams album called Circle the Sun. And so to avoid confusion, when searching for the song, we called it Circle the Moon. And I've always just loved the moon and been very connected to the moon. And I go to Moon Goddess Circles and I love pictures of the moon. I've just always loved it since I was a little girl. And I remember being a little girl and looking out at the moon saying, is that going to be the same moon as when I'm an old lady? It is, it's going to be the same moon. It's the same moon my grandma saw as a little girl. So I just have always had a great love for the moon.
So that was Circle the Moon from Harmony House, Lisa Lynne. Lisa, it's been so great spending some
Thank
time
you.
with you, chatting.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. We are going to include links in the show notes to your website and your YouTube so people can find you and be able to experience more of your music.
Sure. I'm delighted. Thank you so much. I've been sort of thinking about, I've recorded a couple of workshop videos on improvising and doing some other kind of outreach there too. So I'll have it up on my website, some things that are available that I've created recently if people want to stay connected with me or do a little lesson or something as well.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for chatting, and please keep up the wonderful, good work that you do out there with music.
And you're doing it too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or guest suggestions, please email me at openingtheharpchakra@yahoo.com. Also links to PayPal and Venmo if you'd like to contribute to the production of this podcast. We thank you for that. Please subscribe, please share, please tell your friends. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider writing a review on Apple Podcasts. It would be great. In the coming weeks, more beautiful harp music from around the world. I'm Jay Michaels. Thank you. Peace. Namaste.